Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. This seems to tie together now several of the themes that we've been following through the book of James. So here in the first chapter of James, in verse 12, we tie together something we saw all the way back in verse 2. There it said, consider it joy when you have trials. And then it said that the trial of your faith works perseverance. Now we have it kind of reversed. It says the person who perseveres in trials receives a blessing. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial. Perseverance is the fruit of trial, but perseverance gets us through trials. The Christian life is a life of trials, one after another. And the perseverance that we gain from one trial becomes the resource that gets us through the next trial. So perseverance is the fruit of our trials that gets us through our trials. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, when he has hung on and not given up during the trial, when he has stood the test, God is not trying to eliminate people. God is trying to show his power to get us through things. But it is by faith, and we have to hang on to God by faith. The issue of standing the test is not how perfect we are, how good we are at implementing holiness in our life. In another place, we'll see that holiness is a gift from God, not something we gen up for ourselves. However, the test is always about faith, because salvation is by grace through faith. It's always about maintaining your faith as you go through the test. Because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life. Now we have to understand what a crown is. A crown is not the mitre which is worn by modern European monarchs. And by modern, I mean over the last several hundred years. And it is not the crown that we see a few places in the Old Testament. We see a king that wore an iron crown. That would have been a band of iron around his head. Or perhaps an iron helmet that particularly identified him as the warrior king. But the crown that we see in the New Testament is the Greco-Roman athlete's crown, the Olympic Games crown, which was made of leaves. You see, it's not so weird that the soldiers made a crown of thorns for Jesus. You think, why a crown of thorns? Pretending to be, and sometimes they try to show it like as if somebody tried to make it like a European crown. But no, the Romans and the Greeks when they were a champion, they got a crown of leaves, a wreath of leaves put on their head. So we can take some leaves here and we can try to wrap them into something here, and it goes something like this. Okay, so now I have a crown. Paul talks somewhere of a perishable crown. Athletes compete for a perishable crown. Why is it called a perishable crown? It's made of green leaves. Now, typically it was made of bay leaves, which are sort of evergreen. They last for a long time, but it doesn't last forever, and that was done deliberately. In each competition, there's another competition to be done. Another competition will follow. Another test will follow. And the same thing here. There's another test that will follow. But when we have persevered through the test, we will receive the crown of life. So when we see it this way, we see that he is probably not talking about heaven. Everybody tries to make this into heaven. Well, if you just make it through life, you'll go to heaven. That's not what he's saying. He's saying when you get through the test, there is life at the other end. 4 years of misery. But now, suddenly, even though the situation has not changed that I'm in, I'm excited about my life in Christ. That's a crown of life. That is a crown of life that came through a trial. Realizing that God has a plan somehow, and I am not smart enough to understand that plan. And no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to be smart enough to understand that plan, but I'm going to trust that Daddy, the same Daddy that created the universe, knows what he's doing and has a good reason why I'm going through this, why someone I love is going through this. I don't understand why, but I can trust him. And that is the trial. It's taken 4 years, 5 years to get here, to get to this point. But now it is life. And this crown of life is what God wants to award to each one of us. But to get that award honestly, to have it really part of our life, we have to go through the trial.